Jay back with us with his grade A mock draft. But you have to explain how this is different from version 4.0 or 3.0 or the other mock draft. There's a distinct difference.
It's a Kuiper creation.
Okay, Kuiper.
You get to choose who you want, not based off of what you're hearing.
Well, no, that's important. The other mock drafts are what you think will happen.
Right.
This is what you would do if you were in charge.
Right. It's an interesting exercise.
I like
it tugs at you in terms of the need and best player available. I thought about just giving my rankings and just being done with it in 5 minutes, but that wouldn't have been any fun. Right.
And you have Sam Darnold at quarterback. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But let's go straight to the Giants because some say quarterback, some say you can't pass on Saquon Barkley. You've gone in a different direction and have them taking Bradley Chubb.
Yeah, this is a tough choice because part of me wanted to give him a quarterback, kind of going off the theory that they believe that they can get a few more years out of Eli Manning, and if that's the case, it's a tough call again between Bradley Chubb, in my opinion, and Saquon Barkley. But Chubb, to me, is such a complete player. I just love the way he practices, the way he works, the leadership that he's going to bring to the team. This team needs pass rushers. When it was a great team winning Super Bowls, it had pass rushers, and it had a lot of them. And so, to me, Bradley Chubb makes a lot of sense. If you're going to stick with Eli, pass rushers become so important today, Mel.
There he is, Mel Kiper to rebuttal.
Well, I agree with that. I think it's very difficult to pass up Bradley Chubb, who's the second best player in this draft, behind maybe Saquon Barkley. You think Barkley as a running back, do you value that position enough to take the running back over the great pass rusher when after Marcus Davenport from Texas San Antonio, there's a big drop-off. And really there's a gap between Chubb and Davenport. To Todd's point, it's really Chubb and everybody else as a down defensive end. So you can't argue with Bradley Chubb anywhere between 2 and 6. You just can't. Even at number 1, you couldn't argue, but they have Myles Garrett, Cleve Hudson are on their way, and they're going to take a quarterback. But I have no issue with Bradley Chubb. He is a great player with a great approach to the job at hand, which is rare for a defensive end who hustles even onto the practice field every day.
Fair enough, but having said that, Louis, Josina, should the Giants be taking a quarterback? Eli's getting older as well.
Listen, I've said this over and over again. I definitely feel like they should get a quarterback. I understand what Mel is saying, that you can't argue with getting Bradley Chubb between 2 or 6, but here's the difference. The Giants, if they do their job and they play up to their standard, they're not always going to be picking at number 2. So this is why you take the opportunity now. If you believe in any one of those quarterbacks, that you get the quarterback now. Eli Manning, I know that they believe in him, but even if you think he can play for 2 or 3 more years, are you going to wait till he gets at the very end of those 2 or 3 more years and then try to look for a quarterback when you're picking 19, 20, or 25? This is why you take advantage of it now. There's a reason why they struggled getting the ball down the field, and it's not just because of the offensive line or the running game. Some of that has to do with Eli Manning's lack of mobility, and you have to address that so you can get the field down, so you can get the ball down the field to your weapons and Sterling Shepard and Odell Beckham Jr.
When you're drafting number 2, I think it was Dave Gettleman himself who said, you're drafting a player who you think can eventually put on a gold jacket. You're drafting a player who you think eventually is going to be one of those people you put in the Ring of Fame in your stadium. And if you don't feel like one of these quarterbacks is going to put you there relative to what you can get with some of these other players, then you don't take them. And you wind up crossing that bridge down the road if you think that one of these other guys presents better value to you. I personally am of the belief that they shouldn't take the quarterback here, that they should take Chubb, they should take Saquon Barkley. One of those 2 players, I believe, will wind up in a New York Giants uniform, and both of those players will be all rookie. Both of those players will be Pro Bowlers. Both of those players will be all pros, which is what you have to have when you're drafting at number 2.
But you know what? It almost feels like this is the same scenario that the Browns were in last year. Obviously taking Myles Garrett and then Deshaun Watson being there and not taking him. And it's like if the Browns had the opportunity to do it all over again, would you have gone with Deshaun Watson or you go with Myles Garrett, presuming that you're not playing bad again and you're not at the top of the draft again?
Sure, well, look, the Browns, look, you can say what you want about Eli Manning, and we know that Eli is on the back 9, maybe at the 18th hole. Maybe he is. But the Browns had nobody. There's nobody at quarterback. These 2 organizations, I don't even think you can draw a parallel between the 2. And, look, I'm not saying that Eli may be done after this year. Maybe he is. But I think that right now, given everything else on this roster and where they think they are headed and what they think they can get out of these 2 players that we're talking about in particular relative to the quarterbacks, And I'm going with one of these two.
Let's go back to the Browns for just a minute, since we talk about, whenever you talk about drafting at the top, you talk about Cleveland because they've been there a lot. You've got them taking a quarterback, Sam Darnold. If they don't take Sam Darnold but walk away with a quality quarterback, or one that you deem as quality, is it still a grade A draft? Does it have to be Sam Darnold?
I mean, listen, whichever quarterback is number one on their board, it's their choice. No one can take it away from them, and no one can force them to take a quarterback that they don't want. Whoever they think is going to work best with what they want to do and the coaches they have on hand is the one they should take. So at the end of the day, it matters what you get out of the quarterback you draft, not what we put in some silly mock draft. I personally think Sam Darnold's the best quarterback in the class. Lewis thinks it's Baker Mayfield. Kuiper thinks it's Josh Allen. So there's different opinions, and it also matters what you're trying to do with your scheme. To me personally, if I'm drafting for any team, I would take Darnold, but I think he fits well with what they want to do.
Can I jump in here real quick and just say this about the Cleveland Browns in particular, and about just about every team that's drafting up here that needs a quarterback? And relative to these quarterbacks right here, we can sit here and we can chop these kids up over and over and over again about their strengths and weaknesses and which one's the best one and which one's not, which one has this attribute, which one doesn't. What will determine what these kids do, and especially at that number one position, is who's coaching them.
Absolutely.
And whether or not it's going to be Hugh Jackson this year or if John Dorsey's going to blow that staff out of here and bring another one in here, I promise you this, whoever they draft, I would put money on this. That kid's not going to screw it up. The Browns will screw it up for them if it does happen that way, because you know it's going to be a team that's in a state of transition in January.
Well,
we're going to be talking about this
quarterbacks.
Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see how much he knows.
They brought in Zampese for a reason, to work with the quarterbacks.
I'm not on that boat, Josina. I'm not on that whole Hugh Jackson is a quarterback whisperer and he knows quarterbacks. We're going to find out.
I think
at the work that he's done prior to even coming to Cleveland.
With who?
I mean, with Andy, with Joe Flacco, Carson Palmer, what have you. I'm talking about when he was specifically working with those guys. Those guys did elevate and did progress. Now, coming here where you're working with, where you're devoid of talent and certain things are going on beyond your control and you're working with people in the front office, there's other factors that impact him. But he knows how to call a game and work with quarterbacks.
We're going to see.
Mel Kiper, where do you weigh in on all this?
Here's what I was saying. To Lewis's point, I think it's well taken about other players, and don't let the quarterback override the great players or overlook them. I heard exactly that about Matthew Stafford when Sanchez and Stafford were in that draft. Stafford's overrated. Stafford's a thrower, not a pitcher, and you should take the other guys. Look at the other guys in that draft that maybe you would have taken over Matthew Stafford if you would have taken that argument and applied it to that draft when Stafford went number one. There's bust after bust after bust. There's so-called other better players at other positions. Just be a little careful of that. Don't put them in the Hall of Fame just based on college, because it's a big transition. And one thing some of these quarterbacks have, particularly Josh Allen, is a rocket arm and freakish talent. So I think for Cleveland, if they go that route and the Giants end up with Darnold, is it a grade A for both teams? I think it would be at that point. And certainly, that's why I say for the Giants. Giants are in a great spot. They cannot go wrong at number two. Trading out, taking Allen or Darnold, taking Barkley or Chubb. Dave Gettleman's in a remarkable position.
Mel, thank you, and that's why we can talk about this all day long, and we will. More from Todd and Mel in this grade A mock draft. You can find out where he had quarterback prospect Lamar Jackson going, one of the, I don't think divisive is the right word, more intriguing, I guess, draft prospects out there. A lot of different opinions. So
we see it right now.
We'll see. Yeah, that's right. I guess I gave it away. Well, find out what we think about it. How about that?
Don't look.
The NFL app.